Hi, my name is Talia. I'm a staff member at Discovery, and I'm going to help you do your homework today.
So in this problem, we're running a simulation of drawing two marbles from a bag. And we're running it 10,000 times. So classic simulation problem, but there's a couple little tricks that I wanted to explain. So like I said, we're storing the results of our simulation in a data frame called DF. And then draw one is drawing the first marble, and draw two is drawing the second marble. Those are our two columns in the data frame. You want to do the simulation 10,000 times. And also, one thing to note is that you're drawing the marbles with replacement. So when you draw the first marble, you don't have to worry about the number of marbles being one less for the second marble. It's with replacement, so it doesn't matter. And then finally, we're recording the results of the marble that was drawn according to its color. So there's 4 red, 4 blue, and 5 white marbles. So how do we get started with this? Like, the first thing I think that makes a question for some people is like how the colors correspond to the numbers, because later in the question it kind of starts to explain that each color is represented by integers 1 through 13, and that's not super intuitive, like how that works. Like, are you storing colors, are you storing numbers? So the way to think about the whole color integer thing is that there's 13 marbles in the bag, right? You know this. So let's just write out 1 through 13 to represent each marble. All right. So these are all of our 13 marbles. And each color of marble has a certain set of numbers that corresponds to it. So, for example, there's 4 red marbles. The first 4 marbles in the bag are red. First 4. It doesn't really matter what order they are, but that's just how it's represented. And then the 5th through 8th marble is blue. And then marbles 9 through 13, the last 5 are white, which is outlined in the problem. But the way to really think this through is that the first marble is red, right? The second marble is also red. The 5th marble is blue. The 12th marble is white. And that's just kind of like when you get 12, you know it's one of the 12 marbles. And all these 13 numbers and the colors that it corresponds to is just one marble in the bag. So now that we kind of have that lined up, we can dive into our classic simulation steps. So already in our little code box, there's a couple of import statements written, so we don't have to worry about that. The first one, the classic import pandas as PD. And then the second one, import random. So this one especially kind of gives us a clue to how we're going to be doing this question. The random library is going to come into play as expected in simulations. So let's go through our steps. The first step, just make an empty list of the data that we're going to fill later. Our fourth step, we want to go into our for loop, or our fourth line technically, but the second step is simulations. So you want to do for I, that's kind of bad, in range. Don't forget your parentheses, and then n equals 10,000 times. So 10,000, no comma, don't get stuck on that. Python doesn't take commas. And then don't forget the colon, which is necessary to make the next line indented, and then follow everything after this is in the for loop. Okay. So this integer thing that I was talking about before, this is where that becomes really important, because we don't have to worry about messing with random.choice and then putting different colors in. It's really just as simple as randomly drawing one of these numbers, and then when we look at it as a human, we can see, for example, oh, this one was a 7, so it was blue, right? So it's just as simple as drawing a random number between 1 and 13. And the way we do that is random.randint. So you want to start storing the results of your simulation in the columns indicated in the question, draw 1 and draw 2. So make a new variable in the for loop. Draw 1 equals random.randint. And then the two arguments are just the beginning of the range and the end of the range, 1 through 13. The second line is just the same because you're drawing with replacement. The second marble, random.randint, 1 through 13. So that will, every time you run through the for loop, select one of the 13 marbles for your first marble, put it back, select one of the 13 marbles for your second marble. And so our next step in our classic simulation steps is just to make our dictionary, so call it D, just classic, like, doesn't really mean anything, you can call it whatever you want, but D is like kind of intuitive. So you want to put in parentheses. This for sure is going to end up being what the columns in your data frame are called. Later on, when you append this to the data frame, or put it as the data in the data frame, these will become the names of the columns. So this is really important here. These two you can kind of call whatever you want, but I just like to call it the same thing, draw 1 and draw 1, just for like simplicity, so you don't get confused, because then you just do a colon and then draw 1, you'll indicate what you're adding to this, which is just your result from draw 1. And then you want to add a comma, and then draw 2. Those will be the second column in your data frame, and then add a colon. It's actually really easy to put an equal sign here instead of a colon, so remember that. Just make sure it's a colon, draw 2. So this is basically saying in this dictionary, you're matching your results from draw 1 and draw 2 to the columns that you want them to be in. And so you'll do that 10,000 times, over and over again. You'll draw 1, you'll put it in the dictionary. And then, once you're done with that, you want to append your dictionary to the empty list of data. So this list will be getting bigger and bigger during all of your data, and then eventually you can put this in your data frame. So your last step in the simulation, this is always the last step, you want to make your DF. And the way to make a new data frame with new data that you just generated is just to do pd.dataframe, capital D, capital F, and then in parentheses, instead of creating an empty one, because sometimes you see this like with no parentheses, it just creates an empty data frame. You want to actually put in your list of data that's now full of all this stuff and not empty anymore. So you just put data in the parentheses, and this basically takes your list of data and converts it to a data frame format. And one thing to note is that you don't want this to be inside the for loop, because you don't want to like recreate your data frame over and over again. That's not necessary. All you have to do is make sure you're repeatedly adding your information, and then at the end you can put it all into a data frame. It's a lot faster that way, and that's why you want that to be out of the for loop, out of the indentation. So now that you have that, all your variable names are right. When you see your data frame, it should just be 10,000 rows and a bunch of random numbers from 1 to 13. And that's your simulation. Did that make sense?
So good.
No, like actually.